Picture the scene, 19th century Paris. The alleyways are choked with smoke lit by the eerie glow of gas lamps. In this world, there's one name that's whispered with this perfect mix of terror and just awe. He was like a ghost, a chameleon, a man who could literally walk through prison walls and then just vanish into thin air. He was France's most notorious criminal until, in a wild twist, he became its most celebrated manhunter. This is the absolutely incredible story of Eugène François Vidocq. This right here, this quote, tells you everything you need to know about the man: liberty, freedom. It was the one thought, the one obsession that completely drove the first half of his life. As he put it himself, that thirst for freedom could make a prisoner come up with plots inconceivable by the man who discusses them at his ease. See, Vidocq didn't just know what it was like to be locked up, he was a student of it. And this deep personal knowledge, this obsession with getting free, would end up becoming his most powerful weapon. So that's the big question, isn't it? It's one of the most fascinating paradoxes in the entire history of crime. How does a guy who spent his whole life breaking the law end up defining the law? To figure that out, we have to follow his unbelievable journey. A life built on crazy escapes, brilliant disguises, and a deep, kind of scary understanding of the darkest parts of the human soul. So let's jump forward for a second and meet the man Vidocq becomes. He's this terrifying figure to the entire Parisian underworld. He's the guy who founded and then led the Sûreté, which was basically the world's first ever plainclothes detective agency. And his agents? Well, many of them were criminals just like him. They moved like shadows through the city's dark corners. And their boss, their chief, was the infamous Vidocq himself. And that was his secret weapon. His skill wasn't something he learned in a classroom. It was pure, raw instinct, sharpened by years and years on the wrong side of a jail cell. So to really understand the genius of the master detective, we first have to meet the master criminal. We've got to go back to the beginning. Vidocq's path to becoming a legend of law enforcement didn't exactly start at the police academy. No, it began with a complete and total immersion in lawlessness. And this wasn't just some youthful rebellion phase. This was his entire education, and it started when most kids are just learning their multiplication tables. And man, his fall was fast and it was chaotic. It all kicks off when he's just 13 years old, stealing from his own dad's bakery. A year later, he's run off to join a traveling menagerie, a circus, lured in by the sound of a trumpet and some clowns' antics. He joins the army at 15, but military life just can't hold him. The next few years are just a blur of going AWOL, fighting duels, running scams. By the time he's 21, the law finally pins him down, and boom, his first serious prison sentence. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. It was really just the start of a whole new, much more intense chapter. Now, here's the thing you have to understand about this period of his life. Vidocq didn't just commit crimes. He drank in the entire culture of the criminal underworld. He's sleeping on straw next to circus animals. He gets involved with the chauffeurs, and no, not drivers. These were brutal gangs of home invaders who would literally hold their victims' feet to a fire to make them reveal where they hid their money. He learned the secret languages and codes of traveling gangs. He was basically getting a PhD in criminology from the streets, mastering disguise and deception. All of these skills would later become the very tools of his trade. So for a guy like Vidocq, prison wasn't really a punishment. It was more like a puzzle, a challenge. And it's in prison where his legend really starts to grow. He becomes known all across France as the guy no prison can hold. No lock is strong enough, no wall is high enough. He was the uncaged wolf. Let me give you an example of just how clever he was. Take one of his most famous escapes, from a military prison called St. Peter's Tower. Now, getting out of a place like this isn't just about picking a lock. You have to fool an entire military command structure. But where everybody else saw this impenetrable fortress, Vidocq saw a system. And every system has weaknesses you can exploit. Okay, so how did he pull this off? It was a performance, it was pure theater. First step, the disguise. His accomplice, a woman named Francine, visits and smuggles in an officer's uniform hidden right inside her muff. Step 2, the research. Vidocq, who just so happens to be the same height as this officer, spends days just watching him. He studies his walk, his posture when he makes his rounds. Step 3, the diversion. On the big day, another prisoner who's in on the plan corners the real officer and gets him stuck in this long, boring conversation. And finally, step 4, the exit. At that exact moment, Vidocq, now looking every bit the part, just walks confidently, with purpose, right past several guards, out the front gate, and disappears into the city. I mean, the sheer nerve of it is just incredible. But this life on the run, it was starting to take its toll. If you read his memoirs, you can feel this deep frustration. He didn't see himself as a bad guy. He felt he was trapped by his own reputation. He believed he was an honorable man, but that society just kept slamming the door in his face every time he tried to go straight. This conflict inside him, this need to be seen as legitimate, it was really eating at him. So finally, he hits a breaking point. He's exhausted, he's constantly being hunted, and he's just tired of living in the shadows. He decides he's done running. But instead of just surrendering, he comes up with a plan so audacious, so completely unbelievable, that it would change not just his life, but the entire history of law enforcement forever. In 1809, he does the unthinkable. He walks right into the hornet's nest. He goes to the Paris police, the very people whose job it is to hunt him down, and he offers them a deal. He says, "I will give you the one thing you want more than anything else, my brain. My encyclopedic, unmatched knowledge of the entire criminal underworld. I'll be your informant, a spy." And in return, all he wanted was his freedom. I mean, just think about that choice for a second. Put yourself in his shoes. On one side, you have his current life, a fugitive, constant fear, total isolation, and this endless, exhausting loop of escaping and getting caught again. On the other side, a new life as an informant, which brings a whole different kind of terror, right? The absolute certainty that his old friends would kill him the second they saw him. But it also offered a chance, a real shot at freedom, and a way to use all those unique, hard-earned skills for something bigger than just staying alive. And guess what? Vidocq wasn't just a good informant. He was a natural. He was so incredibly effective, so good at predicting what criminals would do and catching them, that he went from being a simple police asset to becoming the leader of a brand new kind of police force. The hunter was officially unleashed. In 1812, he founded the Brigade de la Sûreté, the Security Brigade. Now here's the revolutionary part. His agents were almost all ex-convicts, thieves, forgers, tough guys, men he'd known in prison, guys who spoke the language of the street. It was an absolutely radical idea at the time. You know the old saying, set a thief to catch a thief? Well, Vidocq made that official government policy. And did it work? Oh yeah. The results were immediate and they were staggering. Just look at this chart. You can see the crime clearance rates in Paris before the Sûreté, and then after. It's a massive leap. They were brutally effective because they used the underworld's own tactics, disguises, infiltration, informants, to tear criminal gangs apart from the inside. Vidocq had basically made Paris safer by turning its own demons against each other. But you can imagine the criminals he was hunting didn't see him as some kind of hero. To them, he was the ultimate traitor. This quote from a guy he arrested just sums it up perfectly. He called him a rascal who was dishonored. He was a nose, a turncoat. In their world, it was more honorable to rot in a jail cell than to be free as a police spy. But his legacy? I mean, you just can't deny it. Before Vidocq, police were mostly uniformed guys who just reacted to crimes after they happened. He changed everything. He was the first to systematically use undercover agents. He created the world's first big criminal records database, literally using index cards to track criminals, their methods, their associates. That's the great-great-grandfather of modern data-driven policing. He made using informants a core police strategy. He even messed around with early forensic science like ballistics. These weren't just tricks, these were the building blocks of modern detective work. So in the end, we're left with this huge question. Who was this guy, really? Was Vidocq a hero who finally redeemed his criminal past by fighting for justice? Or was he just the ultimate survivor, a master manipulator who got tired of fighting the system and decided it was easier to just join it? And in doing so, simply swapped his old gang for a new, much more powerful one. The answer, just like the man himself, remains one of history's most fascinating mysteries.